Hi, welcome to Open the Light of Suicide.
That's Tammy White. That's the CEO and founder of the Bobby White Foundation.
This is a girl that's on her phone up until seconds before we start.
And I am?
Who are you? Bonnie Snyder, my friend and co-host, and I won't go any further.
Comedic relief. We decided to do our introductions a little different this time, just because you guys don't realize what goes on before we go live. When Rob says he does the countdown, and we get a little giddy before he says one and the camera goes on.
Yeah, but have you noticed recently he used to do it just 10 seconds. Now he's starting 30 seconds, 20 seconds.
No. It's a fun set we have here.
Are you ladies ready yet?
We can't do anything until he starts rolling, right? When he says, okay, killing audio. Can't do anything until then. But anyway, welcome to the show, guys.
Yes, welcome. We're happy that you're here and that you're here to support us. And, we want to thank Rob and Dylan and John, of course. And then we want to thank you for always tuning in and supporting the show. And hopefully you get something out of it. We do, just by being here and bringing information to you guys. And hopefully it's useful, and got a lot of things going on. I wanted to, we just had Mother's Day, and it's bittersweet for a lot of people.
It is. With this Mother's Day, I was watching, not only my own social media feed and whatnot, but for me, and those of us who are, who have angels, angel children, I just remember posting on my social media page, I could just imagine what Mother's Day would be, if Pat were still here, because he had this tendency, I never knew what to expect for Mother's Day, and he was a stickler about celebrations, Mother's Day, Christmas, my birthday, and whatnot. I remember, the last birthday I had, 2019, that, and I remember sharing this once before, where, I had did I was going to do like an alligator, alligator boat trip. And the interesting thing about it, it was, right after we lost Aiden. And so, some friends of ours, I have a friend whose birthday is, 2 days after mine, like mine's the second, hers is the fourth. And a lot of times we'll get together and, we'll combine our birthdays because, we have the same circle of friends. Mm-hmm. And so to, alleviate any, guilt or however else you want to put it, it's like, all right, let's just do a combined party, or a combined celebration. This way, all of our friends don't have to say, I just went to her party this year. I got to go to her party this time. It's just easier that way. But anyway, we're going on this gator trip. We were going to name the first gator we saw after Aiden. So this was after Aiden, before Pat. And but anyway, I got gone, and Patrick had said something to me about I think he wanted me to send him like a Cash App, a Cash App or something. And it's like I kind of blew it off. And I got home, he was so angry. He was beyond angry. I wanted to give you money for your birthday, and you couldn't even send me, and I was like, chill, son, it's okay. It wasn't like I expected anything from him, but it was just so, I had to resolve myself to the fact that it was important for him,
right?
To, it's like, again, I don't need money from you, child.
Right.
You get money from me, and not the other way around. But no, he was very much like that. And so, as Mother's Days and birthdays come up, I look up and I was like, what, I could just imagine what you would be doing this year. Like, what would you be doing this year? Along with that, there's a one of those group things that I'm in as well, of all the ladies that I graduated high school with, and that collective group of us who all have children that we have lost.
Right.
And then there's this other group over here, of family members who we all have lost a child, and then of course you look expand that out to the community, and I try very hard, although yes, it is bittersweet knowing that, of my 3 children, I only have 2 that are here, that are still left. I try not to, I have to remember, and someone had told me this. Oh my gosh, I didn't know you had that.
I pulled a couple of pictures off your Facebook page.
Those are my oh yes, those are my babies when they were
That's
babies.
when they were little.
So Patrick was probably about, I want to say he was a year old perhaps in that picture. It was a little chunky monkey self. And then of course that's, Jean to my right, and then Carl, my oldest, to the left.
Then I pulled up there.
And then that was, I want to say that was the last family picture that we took. This was the last time I think that, no, it wasn't the last time that Carl was, but one of the, times that Carl was actually here. Mm-hmm. And I was, adamant, it's kind of funny with this photo shoot. They had all the kids here, and I was like, you know what? I haven't had all of you together in a long time. They were going to be here for a bit. I want to go have family pictures taken. So I had the pictures taken of the 3 of them. And at the time, I had a picture taken with all of the children, and then I had them taken with their respective significant others at the time. And what was funny, it's maybe not funny, I really shouldn't say it was funny, interesting, after that photo shoot, everybody broke up with their significant others.
Oh no.
Like, everybody broke up, Carl and and I each, I would say for the most part, the woman that Carl was with at the time, I mean, I'm still in communication with her, today. I love her beyond reason. Now mind you, I love, who he's with now. And, they're all friends. But my kids told me after, that, the last picture, that we're not ever taking another family certificate of this again, because it seems like it was a trend, like one right after the other. Everybody broke up with. So I had this collage in my house. It had the picture of the kids, and then it had the kids and their significant others. Everybody broke up. So I had to, so I'm like, well, it's not a money thing, but I'm like, what I paid for these pictures. And I use my money. I take them down and replace the collage with something else. Yeah, with something else. But yeah, it was, Mother's Day, it was nice. I spent, the Sunday quietly at home. Actually did some painting.
Painting?
Yeah, painting.
Okay.
How do I paint with this boot on that you asked?
Is this the painting project that your HOA was?
Yeah, the outside of my house.
Okay.
My HOA was like, hey, it's, we need to, the thing about it is, like, I can't be angry about it or anything, because I had, submitted, about a year and a half ago. Hey, I want to repaint my house, And for those of you who don't, who may or may not understand how HOAs go, and for mine, if you're going to do anything outside, paint the house, paint the driveway, cut down a tree, resod your yard, you have to submit.
You have to get permission.
You have to get permission to,
No, thank you.
I'm like, you guys want to, how about if I give you permission to pay my mortgage?
Yeah, really.
It doesn't work that way. But anyway, so I was like, okay, let me go and, finish, painting the outside of the house. Because it's kind of, there's some legal stuff going on with my house where it's like, I got to get my ex-husband's name off the house first, then, we'll finish. But anyway, someone had asked me, same thing, how'd you paint with the boot on? I said, well, first of all, my doctor says I can take the boot off at home. I'm hard-headed. So, I was like, I don't want to get paint all over it. So I took the boot off, and I have this long extender
I have
on
that when I paint
on
my,
a
yep.
paintbrush. So I have this mechanic stool. So I'm sitting on this mechanic stool, with the paintbrush, and I'm scooting along, and I was like, so it wasn't on my foot, but
Right.
yeah, I overdid it. I paid for it later on.
So the grandkids weren't there?
No, the boys
the
were
boys
actually
were-
with mom this weekend.
Oh, okay.
They decided they wanted. At first Jabril, was like my daughter's. My daughter's son. At first he was like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay home this weekend. Oh, that's fine. But then he decided, I'm going to go to mom's. And I was like, I was just at their mom's like Wednesday, I think it is. So I was there Wednesday, turning to go back on Friday. Then I had to go back out on Sunday to pick them up, and got to go out tomorrow because she. Her brakes, something about her brakes on her truck, so go out and help her with her brakes. And as I'm doing all these things, interesting, segue, back to the book, is, we were talking last week about, distractions and doing keeping yourself busy. And I was like, oh, do I have so much to, throw into the show in terms of, she says, find a project, do some, things to take your mind off of things. So I think for me, with it being, Mother's Day and, this is May, next month, June, that's, Patrick's birth month. So I found myself, let me start getting myself in the groove to kind of point out what are some projects to do around the house to kind of guess. I do not work on his birthday was the 16th or is the 16th, and my team knows I don't work 16th. I don't
Right.
I don't work Valentine's Day. It has nothing to do with me and a significant other. Sorry, Greg. But no, it has I don't do Valentine's Day was difficult. I don't do June 16th, which is Patrick's birthday. I don't do August 11th, which is, the day, he left. And, depending on how I feel, August 23rd is kind of on the shelf somewhere. That was the day of his service.
Yeah, and that's my birthday and anniversary. I know how that goes. Yeah, well, and I pulled another picture of off your site of Patrick
Yeah,
and
my babies. Interestingly, I had, when I was posting for Mother's Day, there's a lot of times where I still post, we tag people, and I will, tag Patrick in, specific posts. And, when I did the one about Mother's Day, I know that by my posting, I miss you, and things that, pop up on my memory line, where it's of him. And I go, I miss him, and I'll tag him to it. It's not only a source of comfort and relief for me, but I find, too, that it's also a source of comfort and relief for people who knew him.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's been, like the last one I posted, there was a couple people that, again, going back to, Mother's Day, it was like, oh my gosh, this one guy, and some of these people I don't know, but this one young man we was talking about, it's like, I was just thinking about him the other day, and I just remember, how did he say? The last time I talked to him, I was going through something, rough, and it's like I was having a really, really, really hard time. And he told me, he meaning Patrick, he told me to hang in there, that I would get through this. And he was like, I miss, his ability to laugh. I miss his, ability to, pull people, out of, dark spaces and whatnot. And he was like, I miss talking to him. I miss, his wisdom. And as I'm, looking at this, in my mind, I'm like, son, if you, I tell people I believe that, people can, they can see. But I'm like, you should be here now, to know how many lives you have touched, but at the same time, recognizing with his passing, it's like there's good. Sometimes people say there are some good that comes out of tragedy. And when I look at, different people, and I want to ask him one time, we'll think about it, the one guy, Rob, his sobriety is directly attached to, Patrick's passing. I was thinking, perhaps, inviting him as a guest onto the show one day.
Yeah, you've mentioned it before.
But, when I look at, how, his passing has directly affected, someone's sobriety. And, with, Rob, I tell him, I don't know that I want to put this on you, but you do understand if you relapse, for me, that's like losing Patrick all over again.
Right.
And he is like, it's not all about it. To himself, he was like, it is not all about me. He's like, I needed to hear that. Because he was, in a, like I said, I prefer to have him share. But, how many people are like, I miss that phone call from him giving me, words of wisdom or words of encouragement.
Well, and it kind of gives people permission to open up about their feelings and talk. And that's one thing that, a lot of times some people are afraid of doing is even mentioning the person's name because they think it's going to make you feel bad or it's going to make things worse, which it's like totally the opposite. That's what, at least for me, and I know for you, that's what we would prefer. Talk about them, say their name. No, we want to know. We want to know these stories. And just like, me or you opening up and being open and making your comments or doing whatever, it gives those people that may hold back a little bit that kind of permission, and they do open up. Kind of like when I started going out talking out, in public about, what happened, and it gave those people in an odd way permission to finally release what they have been holding in for so long, knowing that it's okay and it's safe.
And see, the other thing too, like what I think about, and of course my brain, you're like, oh, I should have thought about it this week, because this is National Prevention Week,
Right.
and this would have been like a perfect week to, have someone from the recovery community on to talk about, prevention and what does sobriety, mean for them, or what does their recovery mean for them, but to give a like an overview on what recovery is all about. As I was talking, to someone, we got a chit-chatting back and forth, about, we're coming out of, Mental Health Awareness Month and all that stuff. Alcohol Awareness Month last month. And I told him, I said, I'm not in recovery, however, I understand what it means. And, to me, where I draw the connection between, addiction, recovery, and then, this topic is, sometimes, as I, said, multiple times before, in the case of Patrick, I asked myself, was his overdose, an accident? It's just, his addiction out of control and it was an accident, or was the accident, did the accident mask a suicide? But then I'm like, would he really leave his children like that? At the same time, I think he knew that, well, of course with Devin, Devin's going to be taken care of. He's got me, he's got, my daughter. But I'm like, oh, no. Devin was his world, so would he, and I hate to put it in terms of, would he do that to his son? At the same time, as we know with, some, depression sometimes.
Well, and
Depression, it's
yeah.
like that becomes the, more powerful than anything else down here. And it doesn't mean that what is left over, it's not that Devin was insignificant to Pat or that I was insignificant or that you were insignificant to Bobby.
No.
It is what was going on at the
Exactly.
time, was overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, I have, several people that I know lost her mom when she was 4 years old to suicide. Another one, she was a teenager. I'm a member of a group out of Australia, and I was really kind of heartfelt with the posts that the mothers posted for Mother's Day in that group, and it's a pretty large group from people all around the world, and it was more encouraging, and we're in this together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's they didn't, it's not that they didn't love their kids any
Right.
less. It's like you said, it's that moment, and it's just overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And it, unfortunately, it's, with the majority of us, we're never going to have the answers.
We are not.
We're just not. And so we need to be there to support and understand, be empathetic, and do the best that we can do, and help and support each other, and the kids. I mean, that's, we used to joke around. I mean, we had fur babies, and I had a miscarriage when I was about 35 years old, and and we never had kids. Bobby used to tease. We had this kind of running teasing joke that it was our alien baby. And but now it's like, sometimes I don't really struggle so much with it, because when I hear the stuff that my neighbor goes through with her adult son, I'm like, whew, glad we didn't have kids ever. And some of my friends are like, boy, you dodged that bullet. And I'm just like, but then and then I think, it would be nice to have that extra support, but then too, I wouldn't want to have to worry about my kids or our kids because their dad took his life. And then you have that concern for them growing up, just because it's a part of the whole thing. And but like I said, the comments from this one group, from the mothers who had lost their children, it was they were all so, it was just so nice and so supportive, and really cool to read their posts.
And a little shift here. Because for me, talking about, as we're, of course, the theme of the show is suicide and everything like that. But it makes me think about the, maybe not so obvious elephant in the room, the corrections officer that just took her life. The manhunt.
Oh yeah, the manhunt. Yeah,
on.
I saw that last night. Yeah.
Of course, for me, as I'm looking at, here, this woman's 17 years into her career, had just submitted her retirement papers, and for what, because we'll probably never know the reason unless he tell, the individual that she helped escape. So what was behind all of this? I was, kind of watching the news as I was on my way, coming to the studio today, where, the mindset is she was the mastermind behind this whole escape. And I'm like, well, I mean, I had to think about this,
Really?
Well, yeah, put on my corrections hat for.
Well, yeah,
for a
you
second,
worked
right?
in the system, so.
So I mean, let's think about this. Let's think about this. However, she takes him out of the jail in a squad car under the presumption, the guise, that he was going, to, a meeting at court or, a meeting outside of the jail.
Right.
And, so as I'm thinking, if I'm a, say, junior staff, I'm not going to question, the military, is chief of supervision is what we call, like, the person in charge of all of us. So if chief of supervision came into the cell block and said, I'm taking this inmate with me, if I'm, a peon in the block, I'm not going to question the chief.
Well, no, you wouldn't, yeah.
Okay? If chief of supervision said, hey, I'm taking them to, this appointment, again, now in my head, as people were saying, well, wait a minute, she's taking this guy by herself.
By herself, that's, yeah.
Now, of course, that's against protocol. However, I can understand where her staff might have been, that's chief of supervision.
Right.
She knows what she's doing. Who's going to question her per se.
Right.
But then they were talking about, of course, I'm trying to figure out, like, when did they figure out that she sold her house and,
yeah, she withdrew like $90,000 from the bank. Yeah.
The fact that they only got as far as Indiana, like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if I had
$90,000, yeah.
And I'm trying to get away, best believe I'm not stopping in Indiana.
Well, and it was first reported, too, that they had just caught both of them. It wasn't immediately reported that she had shot herself.
Well, they said she'd gone to the hospital with injuries, and so initially I thought that the injuries was, because it was kind of sketchy. But what injuries? First, that micro minute was the injuries were
maybe from car accident.
Well, from him.
From him.
He
Really?
had harmed her. But then, as I'm listening, I was like, I'm in a car crash, and I was like, oh, so the injuries from the car crash. And yeah, it wasn't until later that they said, her injuries was sustained from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And then, this morning, of course, we heard that she had passed away. But at the same time, they had released the 911 call. Because they said she had called 911.
Oh, really?
From the car. And basically, they said in the call, she'd made the comment, I have my finger on the trigger. And so, my question is, and I said when they got, when the police surrounded them, the guy was like, you gotta, you have to help her. You have to help my wife. And so there was a question, why was he referring to her as his wife? I mean, same last name, but not related.
Right.
Unless we find out not related.
Well, they could have got married, I guess, in between, or.
How
they were gone 11 days.
Yeah, but my question is,
how would they
have
pulled it off?
Right?
Well,
unless they had, a friend who's like, okay, I'll marry you guys real quick, and I'll, submit the.
I don't know. Yeah, it's too bad. And if did she plan that if they were going to get caught anyways?
That's a good question. That is a good question. But I looked at, even that situation, was illustrative in terms of, situations that happen that, results in people taking their own. Because, I'm sitting back thinking, as a correctional officer, excuse me, 17 years on the job, just submitting my retirement papers, getting ready to, to basically like, put my feet up somewhere.
Right,
I mean, 'cause I think about when I retired, I'm putting my feet up. I had to go somewhere. I didn't want to go back. Yes, I never want to see the inside of a jail until I went back to jail, working. I jokingly tell people, like, I was working there, guys. I'm not incarcerated. I wonder, like, what was her mindset in terms of, what led up to helping him escape? What did she hope to gain from that? And, but then also, too, the prospect of working on this side of the fence and seeing how it works and knowing the restrictions that, when I say we, have to place on those on this side of the fence. What was life going to be like? I mean, she was clearly going to do jail time. I mean, there was no doubt. So I look at, whether it's, police officers, law enforcement, people, when, they do something and they go to jail, it's like, how, how do they perceive life is going to be? Like it's really going to be different on this side of the fence, especially somebody that was in her position on this side of the fence. I could see staff, looking at her. It's like basically you betrayed the brotherhood.
Right.
You betrayed the brotherhood.
Well, and I think, wasn't it reported that they had that this relationship was going on for like 2 years? Or something?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
That's what
doubt
I thought that I had heard that it had been going on for a couple of years.
I think I heard, I don't know if I heard how long the relationship had been going on. However, I did hear this, planning the escape had gone on for a while, and this had to be going on for a while. But what they didn't plan for is what was going to happen afterwards.
Right.
Like there was no, I got, master plan to get you out. There was no master plan after they were out.
Right.
His attorney, the guy who represented him on the case that had him in jail, to be, not the capital murder case, but the other one, had said what was going on after he got out, while they were on the run, sounded very characteristic of him. It's kind of like, no plan, willy-nilly, spontaneous, no thought, just do it, And I'm like, okay,
That's
you're gonna escape.
That's gonna get you far.
Well, especially if you're 6'9", you figure out.
Yeah.
I want to say he was really, but yeah, if you're that tall and you're gonna escape from jail, you think you would have a plan to blend in with the woodwork. Guess not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I hated to see that she lost her life, and then of course even more so that it was self-inflicted.
Yeah.
It was a suicide.
Yeah. Well, it's just keeps happening. The event we were at this weekend for Petals for Prevention. I was talking to one of the gals there. Handed out a couple of purple folders just last week. I think her son is 16. They lost one of the lead players of his volleyball team to suicide. Yesterday was the funeral, and so she was talking to me about that, and it's just, and it goes back, which we hear all the time, is that, he was the leader of the team. He was the one that was happy and joking and engaging, the last person that you thought would do that, excellent grades, everything. And, very similar to the recent college suicide deaths that we have had recently. It's just, I don't know. I've had to quit watching the news a lot. I have. But, even, going to two events like Pedal for Prevention and having, all the organizations that we have at one function, or one function or another several times a year is really great, knowing that, we have, this organization is here for this, and this organization can do this, and this organization can do this, and so that we can all work together, and we know what each other's doing, so that we can, we can help. It was funny because, last week we talked a little bit about my little fence accident, and I was talking to Kelly, and Hope Shot was there, and she was like, I gave her a little bit of information. She goes, maybe we can do an intervention and see if, see what we can do with this woman who took out your fence. But I mean, we kind of were laughing, but kind of not laughing about it, but
any news on that, the whole fence thing?
Not so far. She She does have a previous DUI, so she was probably instructed by her previous attorney to leave the scene of the accident, so she would not be charged again. This is a typical thing that I heard from a couple lawyers. So she'll never be charged with a DUI. As far as the other law enforcement agency involved, I'm not so sure that I have a lot of faith in them either, because they still have not interviewed the other eyewitnesses to them leaving the scene of the accident. They did, and I don't know if I knew this last week or not, they caught up with her at her apartment that night, in the middle of the night. She denied being in an accident, although she had obvious facial injuries, still denied being in an accident, and refused medical care. And that's calculated. So I don't know. I'm just kind of right now in limbo waiting on the insurance. And I did speak to one of the officers later that night, one night last week, and an attorney told me that she should at minimum be charged with leaving the scene of an accident with property damage over $300, which is a felony. And I mentioned, and this lawyer is licensed in Florida and New York, and has been a lawyer for over 30 years. And I mentioned that to the officer, and he was just like, oh, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I've been doing this for 10 years, and at the most she'll be charged with a misdemeanor. And I'm like, there's blood DNA in the truck. Yeah. Well, we have to have a warrant to get into the truck now. And I'm like, a warrant? She left her truck in my yard. I'm thinking. And
She's like, mine now.
Yeah, exactly. So I said, okay, what's it going to take, to do that? Oh, we need probable cause. I'm like,
The probable cause of sitting on my fence.
okay. She took out my neighbor's mailbox. She probably took out 60 feet of my fence and my gate and hurt my poor trees. I mean, I have to look. I get really angry, and this is going to be really perfect for our chapter here. Yeah, because I get really angry with situations like this. She damaged my trees. Fortunately, she just took out my neighbor's mailbox. She took out my fence and hurt my trees. She didn't hit somebody head on coming down the street the other direction, because she would have ended up killing them, and she would have walked away just like she did with this accident. Because there is no way hitting that oak tree head on as hard as she did, either one of them should have walked away from this accident.
Well, here's the other thing too. When I look at the whole, where I'm perplexed about the whole situation, is she goes through. She hits several objects along the way. She goes through your friend's lands, head on into your tree, and they're like, nothing we can do. My question is, and again, thankfully no one was hurt. However, what if she had struck another car and someone else would have been hurt? Would they then still have the same cavalier, nothing we can do?
Probably if she left the scene of the accident, because she probably would have done that anyways, because she does have a DUI on her record already. But if she hurt somebody, maybe not as much as what she did to my property. But this is what gets me, and I've done a lot of thinking about it, because this isn't the first time it's happened to us. I've lived there for 31 years. My neighbor on one side of me, she's lived there for 15 years. She's had it happen to her 15 times. And I lost count. This was probably not as far as the biggest damage, maybe, but it was the worst accident that we've had, and it's the first one that's happened since Bobby died.
Gotcha.
And one of the tow truck drivers, they were really nice, because this happened at 1 o'clock in the morning. They didn't get the truck out of there till 4 in the morning. Took 3 tow trucks to unlodge it. And he said, well, it's a newer truck. You should be able to get some pretty good insurance money out of this. And I'm just standing there, and of course, it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, it's not even about the money. I said, what you don't get is she was drunk. She caused this damage. I said, my husband built this fence, and my husband is no longer here. And she's not going to be held accountable for her actions. And it's not the first time. And this is when I did a lot of reflection for a few days last week on myself, wondering, why do I get so angry every time this happens? And it's because every single time it happens, the person is not held accountable at all. They're free to damage somebody's property. I mean, granted, I can replace the fence. My trees, I hope, will heal. But they're never held accountable. And it goes all the way back 35 years when my first husband was killed by a careless driver that had a driving record 3 pages long, was on a huge list of medications, never was held accountable for my husband's death. The only eyewitness was a law enforcement officer from South Central Florida somewhere who conveniently disappeared. And somebody said to me, yeah, but you got money, for his death. I'm like, yeah, I spent 3.5 years through hell going through depositions, counseling the night before. And I wasn't even there to witness it, but they put me through that. Mm-hmm. And the money doesn't last. And my husband is never coming home. But yet he gets to go back to his life. And I was told at that time, too, that he would lose his driver's license and he would probably never drive again. And he was driving for a company truck, driving a company truck that belonged to his wife's family. 3 months after he killed my husband, he rear-ended a lady with the same truck, but had more insurance this time.
Wow.
So this is where it all comes from all the way through. And every single time somebody has done damage to our property. My poor neighbor, she got a new Jeep. This was probably about 10 years ago. And she was parked in her driveway. She had just pulled out, parked in her driveway, closed her gate behind her, the road in front of her. A girl that works for the county came around the corner, too fast, probably on her phone, took off my neighbor's bumper, completely took it off, brand new Jeep. Mm. The young girl stops across the street. Within minutes, 3 county trucks are there. Sheriff shows up. My neighbor gets a ticket for blocking an alleyway and had to go to driving school. Hmm. And the young girl never got anything. And my neighbor contacted 3 lawyers, and they told her to pay the ticket and go to driving school.
Crazy.
So it doesn't go away if you learn how to deal with it, and here I am still 35 years later, mm-hmm. and those residual effects and of other accidents piling on of people not being held accountable for their actions.
Well, we say, looking at this chapter, that talks specifically about anger. In our line, my line, I should say, we talk about, what are our triggers to anger. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting in the chapter is how, I want to make sure you get it right. I walked out of the house and left my book. So I'm like, I'm doing this.
I have some things highlighted,
but no, seriously. Like one of the things where they talk about is people get upset when you're angry.
They
you know,
do.
and it's like anger is, it's almost like being angry is taboo in a sense. And it made me, you know, and I said back and I had to think about it, you know, and I'm guilty of this as a parent, and, you know, I'm probably talking to a bunch of other parents out there, well, you know, as well. You know, but think about this for a moment. When our children are, you know, are angry, okay, and I'm going back to, you know, back to that picture that Rob showed, you know, at the beginning of the show. My children were younger. You know, this happened when they were younger. You know, straighten up your face. I don't know what you're so angry about.
Right.
You know, what was the other phrase that, you know, I remember hearing, you know, my parents say to my siblings, and, you know, I will give you something to cry for.
Yeah, I'll give you something to cry about, yeah.
As if insinuating that, you know, the tears and the anger and the negative emotions have no validity.
Right.
You know, so I fast forward now, you know, and I think about, you know, back if I look at, you know, or Patrick with Devin, you know, he, you know, like, you know, I don't want, you know, like, not so much that he wasn't allowed to cry, but in a lot of cases, you know, tears, you know, anger or whatnot were sometimes looked as signs of weakness. And, you know, it was like, whoa. You know, so thankfully, you know, I should say thankfully, you know, I have come around to where, you know, it's supposed to, like, don't invalidate don't invalidate someone's feelings. If someone is upset, if they're angry or whatnot, allow those feelings. Now, and I liked what she put in, you know, what she wrote in the chapter is, you know, these emotions are, you know, they're a part of us, they're human, you know, anger is, how does she write it? I want to make sure. Anger is a reaction to something that we feel is unjust.
Right.
You know.
Being angry is normal. It's a healthy emotion. When you allow yourself to express anger, it's simply energy. It's information. In some cases, anger gives you the energy to face what's yours to face. It becomes a fierce protective love for yourself, for the one you lost. Show respect and given room. Anger tells a story of love and connection and longing.
And I think, you know, what I find, you know, with anger, like I, you know, used to do, I mean, and still to a degree, but I used to do groups that were specific to anger management. And, you know, I talk about that very same thing on how, you know, again, anger is a human emotion. Allow yourself to have it. What is important is that you are displaying it in a way that is constructive
Safe.
and not destructive.
Right.
You know, but also displaying it in ways that, you know, are safe. So when I look at, you know, again, you know, if I'm looking at the fact that, you know, this is, Prevention Week. And I think of people that are, you know, dealing with addiction. You know, it's kind of like sometimes I feel that addiction is anger misplaced. You know, I mean, it could be, you know, depression misplaced, but it's
Right.
also anger misplaced. You know, this is
Right.
what we're doing to, you know, self-medicate or deal with emotions that are out of hand.
Right.
And, you know, so I liked, you know, what she said, you know, in terms of, you know, allow yourself to recognize the anger. And like what you were saying, I know what it stems from. 35 years ago, there was this crash that took my husband's life. You know, and I look at, you know, these, you know, significant emotional events, these traumatic events that happen in our life, that, you know, we think, okay, you know what, that was, that was 35 years ago.
Exactly.
However, it's like if that event was so, you know, traumatic and emotion evoking, I don't care how
It
much
doesn't,
time,
yeah.
you know, something, you know, comes along that reminds you of that, you know, because I look at people and say, okay, let's think about this for a moment. When, you know, I hear people say, but that was so long ago, you should get over it.
Right.
I ask them, have you ever gotten bitten by a dog? Or have you ever, you know, have you been taught, you know, not to play with spiders because you think they're, you know, because they could be poisonous, or snakes or something like that? But let me go back to, have you ever gotten bitten by a dog? Well, yeah. When's the last time you got bitten by a dog? Well, it was, you know, when I was a kid. When you were a kid, okay. Did that bite hurt? Yes, it did. Okay. will you allow yourself to get bitten by a dog again? Well, no. Why not? Because getting bitten by a dog hurts. But wait a minute, that bite was a long time ago. You know, it's like, aha, you know.
Well, and that was kind of like what I went through last week, because, I mean, I've gotten, like I said, we've had these crashes before, and I get really upset. And it goes back to seeing these people not being held accountable. But it wasn't until I was just sitting there and it popped into my head. And I'm like, that's why. And, I kind of still have the same feeling too, like when I'm out driving and I see idiots driving on the road, it makes my blood boil sometimes. And it was only a few months ago that I was driving to my therapy session, and I was like, being like, this light bulb went off, and I'm like, that's why I get so upset. It's I even worded this a few months ago, when I realized it's my anger or grief turned into anger. Yeah, it's my grief that turns into anger at these idiots, and they're oblivious.
Well, and again, and she says it in the book, and I've said it to her, anger is our reaction to something that we feel is unjust a lot of times. And so when I look at, if we look at it in terms of, it's an injustice. You see someone driving along the road, they're driving recklessly, or to use the word, they're idiots driving, and the unjust piece of that is, where's a police officer to
They're
rein
not
them
there.
in and give them a ticket because they're driving, erratically, or the injustice of, speaking, from a spiritual standpoint, God, why your husband, why my son, why anybody, that has been lost, regardless of whether suicide or just death in itself. Why is this? I don't really think it's political, mind you, but this war that's going on, and why these innocent people are dying for something that
just for somebody's ego,
right? Something that doesn't have to do with them.
Yeah.
And so we look at. There's a TV show. I'm not sure about Lost in Space.
Oh yeah, I used to watch that all the time.
And there's one episode in which Maureen Robinson is talking about Dr. Smith, and they're talking about kind of miss him storming around and demanding something, and she talks about how there are some people who are injustice seekers. Who in their life, the main thing, their main focus is on all the injustice, in the world, and being these, seeking all of these injustices and holding them like in their pocket, gives them purpose in life, but not realizing that when you're holding on to these injustices or not processing, why does this thing bother me so much? It becomes consuming, because she follows up. It's like, once we stop, and I'm paraphrasing, mind you, once we stop collecting injustices, once we stop holding on to them, it's like, they're really nice people afterwards, is what she said. And of course, as I'm looking at these different shows, I look at them because that's my favorite show. It's back when I was a kid. At the same time, when you look at it through the lens, in my case, listening to things that are said from a mental health perspective, I was like, she is so spot on, and I think that plays, or is a good illustration of this particular chapter, in that, again, we're quick to be angry. We're focused on the injustice, but a lot of times we either lack the ability, or we've never really fully processed what is it about that injustice that bothers us so much. Once we process that, it's not saying that the anger is going to magically go away,
Yeah, but I think it makes it easier to deal with, and especially the next time.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
And that's the key.
Now,
That's the key
in this book, she gives you plenty of room to write and get your feelings out. And, you know, again, if you want to go through this, if we're just a little over halfway. You can still go through this book with us and get it on Amazon. But we'll finish that up because there's some other places, other things that I want to finish up on there. But before, I promised I would do this. I wore my T-shirt from, you know, we had Kim on last week, from Recreate Your Mind. And I noticed this little heart on the, well, by the time you see this, that'll be over with. But this little heart on the sleeve is D for D, is Do It for Daryl. And this is why Parks and Rec came up with this Recreate Your Mind, Stomp Out Suicide. So we're partnering with them, and make sure you put the prevention phone numbers in your phone. We have new resources for support groups. We'll get those also up on the Facebook page. And we have our quote for the day: "The grief that comes out in anger may not be warm and fuzzy, but it's no less deserving of support."
I like that.
I had about 3 of them that I picked out, and it's funny because when I was writing everything out for the show stuff, I didn't even know which one the picture was, and I was just like, okay, it's just going to be whatever pops up. So just remember, even through grief and anger, there's always hope. Thank you.